Hi.
Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to the number four edition of Leading Well. We are so glad that you are joining us here this morning. And I know as the attendees come cycling in here, I see the numbers jumping up a lot. Welcome. We're glad that you're here today. I have to admit, by way of starting here, that Ebony and I have a problem. And our problem is that whenever we get together, we always seem to have no shortage of things to talk about. And just as we were online here a few minutes ago, just making sure everything was working, we were having problems with the tech assistant, Javier, who was helping us out, was having trouble getting a word in edgewise to instruct us on a few things. So looking forward to a great conversation. I think that the reason that we have this problem, which I think is not really a problem, of course, is that Ebony has fantastic and interesting things to say, and really it has such an interesting set of interests and experiences, and some really fantastic insights. And so we're looking forward to discovering some of those today, and engaging with you as an audience. So thank you for being here. I see Lauren, thank you. Ebony is a rock star. That is indeed true. So Ebony Smith, welcome this morning.
Thank you, Nathan. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. It's really so kind of you to take time out of your busy day and join us for this chat. I'm looking forward to serving you in a way that helps you where you are in this moment. So that's my intent.
I don't want to put the first timers on the spot here, but I want to give you a huge welcome. If this is the first time you have joined with us, can you just put first time in the chat? If it's your second time, we've now had 4 of these. I'm curious to see how many people it's their first time, second time, third time. This is great. We've in the registrations, we've seen a lot of names from all 4. Great. Thank you for being here with us this morning. Awesome. We're glad that you're here. So Ebony and I were having a conversation, as a few more people here filter in. We were having a conversation about food. When I first met Ebony, it was probably about 12 years ago.
Yeah.
And through mutual friends that we have, I remember our discussion included the topic of food. And I know Ebony is always cooking really interesting, fantastic things. So I said, I want to hear what you have been cooking in quarantine as we sort of come out of quarantine cautiously. What have you been making?
More than I should. Let's start with that. I may have a few quarantine 15 that I'm currently working off. And so, you know what? I've been cooking. 3 meals a day is hard. I do enjoy cooking. I took a lot of cooking boot camps before, but so it's everything from like slow roasted ribs to Brussels sprout hash. A lot of pictures on my personal Instagram. I joined a challenge with a few other friends called Quarantine Kitchen, where we would all post 1 picture a day of a meal coming out of our kitchen. And honestly, it seems stupid, but it's one of the things that really helped me prepare healthy meals that were appealing to me, because we decided we were going to create a community. And a lot of times when you're looking for resilience, sometimes it takes that one little spark for you to shift how you were thinking and how you're showing up for yourself. And I stopped eating canned food, and I like really got into cooking great meals for myself, 3 meals a day, because there was this Facebook hashtag we were all using, hashtag Quarantine Kitchen, also on Instagram. And we just started posting our own meals. And so everybody gave their kitchen a name. So mine was the Alfresco Kitchen, because I also decided when we were in deep quarantine that I would eat outside at least once or twice a day. And so just eating outside, on my balcony helped me a lot and helped move me forward. So that's what I'm cooking. Lots of good recipes. And also I was asking a lot of my friends, I'm like, would your mother be willing to teach me how to make stir fry? You're Chinese. She's from Hong Kong. I would like a private cooking lesson with your mom. Is this possible? And like just kind of tapping into friends' parents. I mean, one of my girlfriends, like, my mom will help you cook whatever you want. She needs something to occupy her day. And it was a great thing to just kind of get on a Zoom call with her mom and say, what can we make? This is what I have in my house. And she's like, this is what we can make. And so those kind of things, I think building that community really helped me with resilience during quarantine. And it was free, and people were really excited and happy to do it.
That's fantastic. And I think it's one of the things that's really notable about you, Ebony, is that you are fantastic at creating community, and tapping into community. And the other thing, and I think this is a nice segue also into a little bit of an introduction about you, is that, you know, so currently now you are an advisor to senior executives and from people from in all kinds of roles, including top executive teams. You are also a coach, an executive coach. So you work with individuals as they're navigating not only their career, but their life, and leading in all kinds of different contexts. And one of the things that I know I've learned from you is this idea of having purposeful kind of rescue habits, or things that make you happy. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I think this is, it's really important, and I've really tried to implement that thanks to you. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I would say I create a list of things, two lists, one list, things that trigger you. And the triggers really, regardless of whether or not it's the person, the place, or the event, it's because typically somebody's rubbed up against your values. And until you actually delineate what your values are professionally, personally, and then also inside your family, it's sometimes easy for you to get triggered. Those are the things I didn't know when I was operating in corporate America before I became a coach. And I would say the opposite of that is, what does it take to reset you in the moment? And so right now I'm holding my mala beads. And so I meditate a few times a day. And it just gives me a great reset. It's funny. So some people have taken virtual classes with me. If there's like a big break in the class or in the classes I've been taking online, I actually go and do a meditation really quick for like 10, 15 minutes. And it really kind of brings me back to who I am. And so keeping that list and have it as your in case of emergency really begins to move you forward, because you can do the reset internally yourself.
So you're working with executives or with just people from all over all the time, and saying, look, so tell me if I'm getting this right?
Okay.
The idea is we sort of go through our lives, and we're not thinking, we're not sort of being mindful of those things that can trigger us and make us frustrated. And oftentimes these are the things that bring out the sort of dark side, or the things that we don't want, the problem behaviors.
Yes.
And so when you're working with leaders, right, or when you're working with people, just, you know, sometimes there's a few things they're trying to get better at. And oftentimes there are these triggers, these moments that we're not fully aware of, and being cognizant of the fact that, look, it's only happening in these kinds of situations. So maybe I need to be more mindful of when I step into those situations, what I can do to, I think self-soothe, I've heard you. I mean,
Yes.
how do you rescue yourself, right? And so
I rescue myself. Meditation works. Counting down works. If I feel really emotional, if you add 2 3-digit numbers together and you feel like you're going to cry, because oftentimes for women, that'll be a response that comes to us. We want to cry in that moment, but we don't want to cry, right? Because we have our branding that we have internally in the company. If you add 2 3-digit numbers together, you will stop that crying response. And so that has saved me many times in meetings where I'm frustrated, or I'm just touched by what's happening to the person, but I don't want to upset them more by my emotional response to their story.
So you get into a cognitive task to try
and
solve the emotional task.
Yes. The researcher in Dr. Nathan Hiller will tell you, like, this is really what it is that you're doing. And so doing that, but I also have a set routine in the morning. Also, that really helps. So I spend about an hour on myself. I always tell my clients that you have to invest in yourself every day in order to get the changes that you want. And so my days begin to smooth themselves out, because I do that 5% investment. And so I've talked about it before. I'll say it again. It's 1,440 minutes in a day. There's 5% of that is 72 minutes. If you spent 30 minutes in the morning on yourself, 15 minutes midday, and about another 30 minutes at the end of the day, you're going to see a change. And so that's one of the first steps that I often ask clients to do at the beginning of our engagement is, what does your investment in self look like? It's really hard to pour from an empty cup. And so that reset of having that set time already scheduled in is an important part of building resilience, 1, and 2, making yourself successful. So my morning one looks like a walk. I love a morning walk. It evokes the Japanese practice of tree bathing is what it's called. And so
Okay, I don't know this one.
the research shows that if you walk under 11 trees, it has an effect on how you show up. And so 11 trees, that's all you got to do. You can do that during quarantine. I did it. I'm doing it every morning.
Right.
And so I do like a half an hour walk. And then I also do a little bit of meditation where I'm listening to something that is important to me or helps me reset. And then I also journal, just kind of get down my thoughts, not like anything crazy, but maybe write down 5 small wins I want that day and then 10 blessings, because the research of Dr. Sonia Lubomirsky from the University of California, Riverside, she's a clinical psychologist. She says that somewhere between 3 to 5 times a week, writing down your gratitude list makes a big difference in how you show up for leadership. So it doesn't have to be anything that's really complicated. It's just doing a bullet list really quickly and going about your life and just reminding yourself that you can show up differently by intention. So I always tell clients, attention energizes, but intention transforms. So if you get intentional about your actions, you're going to really begin to see the shifts that you're looking for.
I think there's so much in there, right? And I love this, some of these intentional practices. And I think there's also the possibility that we can have, we may not be able to do some of this in the context of just a day. We may not be able to step out during the day. And I love the thing one of the things that I picked up from you is, what's your rescue, like candy or treat or something that you can do just that like puts you in your happy place for a moment.
Yes.
And I think, and to me, what's so powerful about this is this idea that we need to be intentional and recognize where we're at during a day, because we often go through these cycles and we sort of have this idea, this belief that we're machines, that we just need to power through. And that's actually not the way to be most effective, but it's actually to start to engage in some of these ways. So let's, I want to hear a little bit about how you ended up where you are today. Because you have had a really interesting path. You lived in a lot of different cities, and you've had a lot of different, you've made some industry switches that were really interesting. And I want to explore that. And I think this is relevant to no matter where you are in your career, including even the students. I mean, because I think there's some really fascinating stories around, so tell us like where you grew up, where you went to college, and how, like, what does this look like for you?
So I grew up between Baltimore and then our family farm in South Carolina. So I spent all of the school year with my mom, and then most of the grandkids, we migrated to our family farm. And so I spent a lot of time farming tobacco and picking cucumbers and learning how to can from my grandmother and hanging out with my aunts and my cousins. And I think that's a good foundation for kind of how I show up in many ways, because it's that community that my grandparents really fostered, making sure that we all knew each other. So I feel I have a very close relationship with all of my first cousins because of spending those summers at my grandparents' house. From there, my mom was a teacher when I was very young. And so she decided that I was going to be a STEM kid, whether I actually wanted to be a STEM kid or not. So she sent me to a middle school, and then I went to a high school that was
She was a biochemistry teacher. What was she?
She was a biology teacher, 8th grade biology when I was really young. Yeah. And so she had a degree in biology, and she's the first generation in my family that went to college. And so she decided that I was also going to go into the sciences. And so I ended up getting a chemistry degree and then a master's degree in environmental protection and safety management. I then joined the oil industry, believe it or not.
So that was in the Northeast, I think, right?
That was in Philadelphia. Yep. I went to school in undergrad and grad school in Philly. And then my first oil company was based in Philadelphia as well as my second one. My job was in Philadelphia working for them as well. So I started off doing construction and operation safety, really auditing and assessment for compliance with OSHA and DOT regulations, and doing oil spill responses is kind of like as needed, but mainly doing construction and working with people, right? So I was doing the auditing of active construction sites and helping people do hazardous materials evaluations for any kind of construction projects that we were doing. So that was a big part of my career for about 7 years. And when I went to my second oil company, I still did that. I was still climbing tanks and wearing, steel-toed boots and Nomex, which is fire retardant clothing, every day to work. I smelled like oil at the end of the day, which was perfectly fine. I did that for so long. I was in a hard hat. And it was a great experience, actually, I remember my very first construction crew. So it's a union environment, and I was, of course, a salaried worker. So I was management.
Yeah.
I was 24, and I remember my first construction crew where I was not second in command, but you're kind of like, as a management person, like you are overseeing the skilled trades that were there. And my first crew was actually awesome. And I remember thinking when they were introducing themselves and saying how long they'd worked for the company, most of them had worked for the company longer than I had been alive at 24. And I said, okay, so I'm new and I'd been trained, and we were always on an active site. And I remember my very first oil spill, I was super scared. And I asked one of the guys who'd been doing this for a while, one of the electricians, and I was cold, and I was also cold because I didn't have the right equipment with me. And he said, well, I have a set of hunting overalls an extra set of hunting overalls in my pickup. Let me go get those for you so you can warm up. You need another hard hat liner, which I put that on. And then I said, okay, I know how to do this in theory. This is my first spill. He goes, it's not my first one. Don't worry, I'm not going to let you kill us, but I will walk you through it. So if you have a question, you should ask me. And there's no harm in being the expert, but tapping into the people that you are leading in that moment, because it really is about the collective mind coming together to solve the problem. And I would say that's probably the first moment that, as I think back, that was like my first leadership moment where I was like, okay, so I can just exhale. They don't expect me to be the expert. I know these things, the regulations, to make sure that if we had a government inspector here, they also know how to apply it very practically. And so it was from there that I thought, I need to know the academic part, but I also need to know the practical applications to make what I'm doing very creative for the people who are listening that I want to engage. And so I did that for, like I said, 7 years. And then I took an internal job switch to move to Chicago to go.
So can I stop and just ask a question there? Because I think
sure,
what's going through my mind is I'm imagining, so for any 24-year-old to be, for those of you who have worked with in industries that are typically considered more blue collar and that sort of have a sort of a mindset that often goes along with that. I mean, these are sort of tough, usually it's male, usually it's tough, sort of like tough guys. Oftentimes it's very white, especially in certain industries, like the petroleum industry. Like, what was that, what was that like for you? Because you've got age, you've got gender, and maybe probably race, then two kind of coming in all at once. Like, how did you, and it sounds like you had people who really believed in you and who were going to help you through that. But like, how were there moments when you just were like, wow, this is very different?
I would tell you that, one, they're skilled labor. So they are blue collar, but most of them made 3 times as much as I did. Coming out of college with a master's degree, and as electricians and welders, like it's very skilled labor. And so they were actually very kind. I remember my first pipeline crew, we pigged pipelines, which is a very technical term, but you send a metric through that kind of measures the width of the pipeline. And so we were a maintenance crew, and that crew, for all the gruffness of what they are, always warmed my company vehicle up, cleaned the snow off of it without me asking. They're like, hey, by the way, give me your keys. Are you going home soon? I'd be like, yeah, no, give me your keys. I'm going to go warm your car up and take the snow off. So yes, I was treated differently because of my gender, but no, it wasn't in a negative way. And I'm not saying that's a treatment everybody gets, but I think that oftentimes I've been graced with being with people that if I treated them well, they treated me well. And it didn't mean that I lacked authority, because my nickname wasn't a great one, but I knew it and it was okay. But they had a respect for the position that I held, and I had a lot of respect for the work that they did. And so those things I think really helped me. And I also had a great boss at the time who I could call at a moment's notice and say, hey, this is what I'm seeing on the readings. This is where I am. How should we dig this trench? This is the first time I'm putting a cofferdam in so we could excavate this pipeline and work on it. This is the process we came up with. This is what I'm seeing in the field now. Can you help me like walk through this? And this is before video phones, because I'm old. And he absolutely did. So I think the supportive community and treating people well really helps. And then also really knowing that it's the collective mind of all of the experience of my team coming together for us to really begin to solve those problems. I
For
will
those
tell
of
you
who don't know Ebony, go ahead. Yeah.
I'll tell you, it was different when I went in an all white collar environment than when I
Mhm.
was in an all blue collar environment.
So
I can't say I had the same level of respect.
That's interesting. Yeah.
I did not have the same level of respect when I moved into an all white collar, all office position as I did.
Before we get into that too, because I want to hear about that transition, I remember you telling a story once about how you were building bridges with people who are really different than you. And I remember you telling a story about recognizing, hey, I know this guy who is really into hunting and fishing. Mm-hmm. So maybe that's how I build a bridge. I mean, as I understand it, wasn't something that you're particularly interested in. So what can you tell us that story?
So I eventually moved to trading. And so that's where I spent most of my time in the oil industry, is on a trading floor.
Okay. I was thinking that was when you were in safety. Okay. So now you were in safety, thinking about occupational safety and health and like pipelines and all this stuff. And then you moved to a totally different environment. But I mean, interesting, because you're doing trading of petroleum products, right?
Same company, new job.
So interesting, same company, but totally different job. So now you are trading, you are a commodities trader. I mean, how do you make that transition? And for those of you who don't know Ebony, you're amazed. I mean, what an interesting sort of route we've gone to. You know, we've gone to different cities, we've gone to totally different industries. You transition from then to commodities trading.
Yes. And I transitioned because I had my boss at Health and Safety said to me when I joined my second oil company, he said, "You're a great worker. We love you. You've been identified as a high potential. But part of me getting street cred here as a manager is I need to let my best people go. So next year, I don't want to have a performance appraisal review with you. So I'm going to put you in places and invite you to meetings that will seem, why am I here? You're there because you need to get a new job. And I would need to introduce them to the amazing talent that I have on my team."
That's how you do it. If you are a company, that is how you do it.
Yes.
You evaluate leaders on how people are successful when they move away from you and when they move up and when they move out. I love that. That is awesome.
Yes. And so I had this great manager and so that's what he said. And so he started inviting me to places where more people could get exposed to me in different cities and in different parts of our company. And from there, I had a dinner at a random managers meeting that wasn't typically in my space. And I talked to a guy and I said, I want to move into the supply and trading group. And he said, okay, let me know the next time you apply for a position, which was like a month later. I emailed him and said, hey, I'm going to apply for this position. He said, great, you will get an interview. I need you to do the rest after that. And I did. And so I moved in from maintaining the pipelines that I was working on to scheduling them. And so that's how I got to learn more about working capital and CapEx and OpEx and how it works inside the corporation. And I did that for and that boss also, because this was a company culture thing at the time, I don't know if the oil company still has it, but it was really ingrained in the culture. He said to me on my second day, he goes, we're really happy to have you. And I'm glad you did the relocation. This job may bore you. Before you get bored, you come to me. I won't stop you from taking any other job in our division as long as you stay on the trading floor. And he goes, let me know how I can help you. I know you're a high potential in the company, has a lot invested in you, and I'm willing to. And so from there, I did that job probably for about 12 months. Wow. And I said, you know what? I think I'm ready for a change. And he's like, what do you want to do? I said, I really don't know. He goes, then start inviting people on the trading floor to lunch. And so there was a guy who knocked on my desk every time. And if anybody's seen pictures of trading floors, it was about 1,200 of us open seating on a bench. And he would knock on my desk. And I was like, okay, buddy, why are you knocking on my desk? He goes, finally, it took 2 months of me knocking on your desk. I want to get to know you. I think from what I observed, you could be a person for my team. I was like, oh, and he goes, we're going to have some openings in 2 months. I'd like for you to consider working with us. He goes, and invite me to lunch. We went to lunch. I gave him my story. When I eventually interviewed for the job, He asked me what a derivative was. I only knew a chemical derivative. I didn't know what a financial derivative was. And he goes, that's okay. We can teach that. I'm glad you know what a chemical derivative is. The chemist in me knew that. And from there, I got the team trained me. And so the fact that I didn't know anything about puts or calls or swaps or options or what backwardation or contango meant at the time really spoke to the community that I was entering. And a trading team always feels like they're together because all of our bonuses and positions are really in lockstep. And so you work out every problem. And I think being incubated on a trading floor for 13 years, being in lockstep with people that you must have absolute trust in, even more so than when you're in a life-threatening situation when I was in oil operations, because this is financial operations for the shareholders of our company. We're not trading a random client's money. This is our shareholders' money. And we really wanted to do the best for our shareholders and how you show up for them. And I think being incubated in that environment really taught me what it meant to be a team that was seamless. Because it didn't matter if I picked up the phone for my customer or the guy next to me picked up the phone for my customer. The customer should still get the exact same experience. They shouldn't know that I'm traveling for work. They shouldn't know that I'm on vacation or that I'm busy. They should feel engaged. And we had a whole system built out on how to do customer and client engagement so that people felt like they were getting the same experience from everybody on the team, whether they were calling our office in Chicago, our office in Singapore, or our office in London. We all had the same ethos. And I think that is really some of the leadership skills that comes from being on the trading floor. Also in making great decisions quickly, because oftentimes people vacillate too much. As a coach, I know it's called nurse, curse, and rehearse, but I would say that when I'm in the moment, I really learned what it was like to make a decision, trust my gut, and move forward. And I remember the first time when I moved up into more senior management, my SVP of trading was going on vacation for a month. And he's like, I'm not going to be available. I said, well, what do you want me to do? It was a new company. And he says to me, you make the best possible decision. If there's any fallout, I'm always on your side. And then he goes, and by the way, I'm not answering my phone, but here's my wife's cell phone number. If you absolutely need me, she will always answer her phone because of our kids. But I'm not going to answer my work cell phone. And so you have that as your fail-safe. And honestly, it worked out really well. Like I was like, he would check in once a day because trading is that kind of oversight. But I was like, he's like, how's it going? I'm like, great. He's like, really? I'm like, great. Don't worry. I got it. And he's like, awesome. And I think having good managers, if you're a leader out there, letting your people have just enough leeway so that they can grow into that leeway and keep giving them more and more. That's one of the ways you're going to really build a team that feels confident. They're very resilient, but also they're able to step up their level of influence and responsibility inside the organization, is letting them have those, technically in coaching, it's called a heat experience, letting them have those heat experience so that they can really grow in a way that's bounded and safe, but makes them feel like they're reaching the edges of their capability as you begin to stretch them. So I don't know, what's our next question?
That's really tough. I mean, that's the tough work, right?
That is the tough work.
Of leading, right, is what's the right level. And you have to know, you know, one of the things that comes to mind is that you are super motivated, super bright, and like willing to be coached. And not everyone, you know, when you had leaders who were coaching you, and it's such a hard thing because you don't always have that. You know, you don't always have that on your team. But I think everyone probably wants to know how you find an organization that was seemed as nurturing and systematic in developing their people. And that's sort of the you know, a key question here. But I don't want to let this question drop off, and just because we alluded to it earlier about the hunting story. So can you come back to that?
Sure. So
it says something about how you build bridges and how you think about building bridges, which I think is really honestly at least one of the pieces of your secret sauce.
Okay. So when you're a revenue generator, the company wants you to make your number, right? So we were a top line revenue generating team. And so one of the things you have to do when you go out and originate new business, this is a very oil company term, but you go out and you originate deals. you can trade, but you need somebody to trade with. And so you have to go out and originate the deals. And oftentimes, because I was dealing with the C-suite of large airlines and manufacturing firms and maritime companies, as they're all white men. And I oftentimes was the only Black person and the only female. And so how do you build that bridge? And so for one of my clients, I just put up, I noticed when we would have lunches or dinners for client meetings, he really liked to talk about hunting, which in oil at the time, it's a thing. It's probably still a thing. People like to go hunting. And so I set up a Google alert for hunting stories, literally. And because that was a part of corporate culture then, with the Wall Street Journal, we really had a breakthrough when it was a Wall Street Journal article, believe it or not, that talked about this new way of fishing. And I got the Google alert that I set up. I read the article and I was like, he hasn't answered my last 3 prospecting emails about a new deal. But I sent that note. He responded 5 minutes later, added, he was the treasurer. He added the CFO and the CEO of this major airline that's publicly traded in the United States. And he goes, oh my goodness, this is the best article I read all day. Hey, Ebony, and he's like adding them in. So we start this chain of crazy talk about things people do, not that they were actually going to do it. And it's from there, he goes, we haven't had lunch in a while. Why don't you come on up to the office so we can have lunch? We talk about the hunting story. We start talking about going to our family's houses and having to sleep on the floor for Thanksgiving. Because he goes, I'm treasurer of this airline, but I sleep on the floor at my sister's house for Thanksgiving every year. And that's okay, because it doesn't matter how successful you are. You can't leave the people that built you up. And so he goes, I'm going to go and sleep on the floor at our house with my kids and my family. And it's going to be great because my parents and my older relatives get the beds and we get the family room floor and we just kind of huddle. And it's in that conversation of humanizing who he is as a person and as a client that the relationship with him really began to
grow. And I think there's something that's so, I think, inspiring about that, because it's something, you have to be authentic, but you have to meet people where they're at.
Yep.
Right.
100%.
Like and we often expect people to meet us where we're at. And when you're, in this case, we're talking about sales, but when you're leading other people, you need to meet them where they are at. And that's one of the struggles, right? And if you're navigating that across sort of like cultural divide of like, I don't know anything about hunting, but or fishing, but let's, so if you don't, then how can I do this in a way that I feel like where I'm still being authentic? And so my question for you is, how do you do that and still be authentic? Because I think that's one of the things that keeps people from reaching out in ways like this, right? Because they feel like, well, it's like I'm trying to manipulate them or something like that.
Yes. So I've never gone hunting with a client. People on my team have, because they are hunters, but I have gone to like shoot clays or things like that with them. But I think just having that knowledge of what they're interested in and just trying to make that the outreach, and from there knowing that you can grow and saying, I'm going to extend this olive branch. He wanted to do business with me. He also was trying to figure out a way to connect with me. And so it's inside of that willingness where both of us kind of meeting in the middle that you build that kind of personal connection you need to get the relationship going. And it can be from anything from cooking to really music. I've taken people to concerts when I was in sales. Like there's a lot of different ways you can build community. I would say on my team, because the team, eventually I was working where I was one of the senior leaders. We had potlucks. Believe it or not, decorating somebody's desk at work, which is hard to do in COVID, but decorating somebody's desk or having a potluck and everybody you bring in donuts you bring in bagels, you bring in juice, and taking that kind of 15, 20 minutes to celebrate them and who they are and how they choose to show up is another great way to build community. And so those are the things I think people forget and how you humanize leadership. One of my mentors, he just retired as the CEO of the largest mining company in the world, BHP Billiton, Andrew McKenzie, who's an amazing man. And he became my mentor when I was working at BP. He was the global vice president of chemicals then. I remember often he would invite me to come and observe him in action. And he goes, so one of the best ways you're going to see how people show up is to see them in action. And so I saw him with his vice presidential reporting team and how he interacted. I said, you don't talk a lot. And he goes, that's not my job. My job is to ensure that they learn how to fight and come back together. I can make a decision, but that won't teach them how to take over my job. And so I'm just here to referee if needed. He goes, they always come back together. And then I have the liaison activities for more senior management to the CEO. They have the liaison activities to the people that are running the operations in the business. And we come together to talk about where we need to meet and what ideas we need to come up with. And I think it's from that mentorship from Andrew and talking to him very regularly that I began to grow. It was in those conversations. He went through what comp looked like at his level. He didn't tell me his numbers, but he's like, this is perquisites, this is what stock options are. Have you asked for these things? I didn't know enough to ask. All right, people talk about raises, but there's a whole slew of perquisites you could also ask for. I didn't know enough to ask, and he was kind enough and generous enough in our relationship to begin to talk about what perquisites look like and why you should ask for those things and why they're a standard part of how corporations remunerate employees. And it's a total comp package, not just a salary, that becomes really important. And so I think it's those things that sometimes when you are just starting out, or if your parents never had those kind of jobs, you don't know that that could be a part of how you're compensated in a large company. So yeah, Andrew, I still chat with occasionally. When I started my business, he follows me on LinkedIn. He likes my
that's
videos.
Awesome. Yeah.
Right? He just retired as the CEO. And so, you know, he was a great person that supported me in how to create thought leadership and leadership presence very early on in my career. And also, I'll tell you this, for as senior as he was, when he would come and observe me at my job, he would turn off his cell phone for the entire day. We were a Fortune 5 company at the time.
Are we all hearing this? What?
And he would just listen, right? We're going along with ride-alongs with truck drivers who are delivering fuel for the company. His cell phone's off, and he goes, so he said, I told my administrative assistant, if she absolutely needs me, she has your cell phone number. So if she rings through, please pass me your phone. Yeah. But I'm going to be present with you because I committed this day to learning your job in the company and spending the day with you. And that meant a lot. And so seeing that kind of leadership at that level from this amazing person really helped shape how I was going to show up as a leader for teams. And I think that's a big part of it.
So how can we help? So I want to get to two kind of different pieces. One is how are you currently helping leaders design their better life? And so that can be personally and professionally. Mm-hmm. I think that ties into a number of questions that the people who are here today have submitted ahead of time. Mm-hmm. There's a number of questions around like, hey, how do I deal with, not balance? Should I even be thinking about like, how much should I devote to my career, or what are practices that I can do to help come out of my shell a little bit? I'd love to hear about what you're working on with leaders right now.
Okay. So one, I say we're going to co-design your life. So you have to think of yourself as multiple products. So there's you at work, you at home, you with your friends, you with your family. If you step outside of yourself and kind of take and helicopter up and take a bird's eye view of how you're showing up in each one of those roles, the opportunity for redesign becomes a lot easier. And for my clients, I'm just asking the questions, what's not working at work? What do you want to happen at work? And how can you show up differently? It's in that design process that it becomes much clearer. Instead of just living your life, you actually plan it out and you become intentional about the things you'd like to get from your career and life. And it's in that relationship of asking good questions that are powerful, that open people up, that you begin to have a different way of looking at how you're showing up for yourself and then also for other people in your life. It really isn't about staying where you are. It's about always iterating again on who you are and who you'd like to be. There's a quote that I really love. Well, there's two. One by Joseph Campbell, and I should look it up to get it right. And it's a great quote because in the sense that he talks about letting go of the life that you have. This is it. We must let go of the life we've planned as so to accept the one that is waiting for us. So a lot of people have a lot of aspirations and goals. And Joseph Campbell is a great mythologist. He does a work around the hero's journey, and accepting that at every stage and every role that you play, you have a different part of the hero's journey that you're on. And depending on how complicated or in depth your life is, you may be on six different heroes' journeys throughout your life, and they're all in a different stage. And I think part of understanding where the satisfaction will come from is understanding that I just am in a different part as a mother. I'm in a different part as a leader. I'm in a different part as a wife. I'm in a different part as of the hero's journey as a daughter. And once you recognize where you are inside the journey, it makes it much easier for you to begin to design and up level where you are to get closer to your actual goals. I would say,
and letting go. There's something great about what you said with the quote, which is like letting go. You have to let go of some. You have to be willing to let go of some things that aren't working to be able to get it right. And I think that's probably a lot of the work that you do is getting with individuals is helping them let go, right? Because we can't.
I would even say the opposite side of that as well, letting go of the things that are working for the discomfort of growth, right? I was talking with a client yesterday and I said, there's an amazing volatility happening right now with COVID and the social unrest that's going on in America. You're probably going to get promoted. I've seen probably about 2 or 3 of my clients getting promoted or being reorganized as a part of the organizational shifts that are happening now. And my client literally said to me, I just got settled. I don't want to get promoted. How can I talk them out of that? And I said, that's not the role I play for you. I'm not here to help you play small. I'm here to help you optimize your gifts and share them with the world. And so if your company needs you to step into the leadership gap, I need you to get your mindset around this before they come to you. And so there's a lot of gaps out there that's seen by some of the social media posts, the things that are happening, and they're going to come to the select few. Somebody on this call needs to hear this right now. Your company is going to come to you. Your organization is going to ask you to step into the gap. It is up to you in this moment to decide that you're going to work towards being that person or developing that team that can help the company through this time. That's how leadership is bred. That's how leadership is tested. Iron will always sharpen iron, but it's only until you accept that your growth will also include a lot of discomfort and getting rid of the really comfortable things that you'll begin to see the exponential changes that you're looking for in your life. It's not going to come from the fact that you're really comfortable and that you're really good and you enjoy what you're doing. So that's where I am.
I love it. That is awesome. And I see people lighting up the chats who really appreciate that. So how can someone take that idea and embrace not being looked over or so if someone is struggling with being shy and just sort of not getting noticed, how can they enact that?
One, you need to reach out to people and begin to have one-on-one conversations. Your shyness may only come up in the fact that you're in a group setting. So if you initiate the conversation yourself, it makes it much easier for you to begin to shape how the relationship begins to grow. People are searching for connection right now. You reaching out and making connections with new people in your organization or on the team is one of the ways that you can help yourself get over it. And one, shyness is not an excuse. It is a trait that you can manage around. Figure out, how do you like to meet new people? How do you enjoy building new relationships? And go there for the start. So if it's in an activity, if it's in an organization, if it's in you serving, then go serve and then talk to the people that you're serving with.
I wonder too, if there's something about, that I've been kind of tossing around this idea, and we mentioned it in the last webcast, this idea that people as well as organizations have, and there's a lot of hurt happening right now, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
There are a lot of people in really rough shape. So I want to just acknowledge that as it relates to the economy, as it relates to issues of racism and inequality and what that looks like. And so, we are in a tumultuous time. But what I'm also, there's this I can't help but be maybe naively optimistic that people are showing, quite a few people are showing resilience
Mm-hmm.
and the ability to change and engage in conversations and to shift and to get better at things and to become more effective and productive. And organizations are doing things like in shifting in their cultures and things, just the way they operate in ways that would have taken them years, and they've done it in months.
Yes.
So, I mean,
And some of them in days.
yeah.
With some of the social media campaigns that are going on out there.
So I wonder if there, I mean, to me, this shows that there is this, and I mean this, I don't mean to sound Tony Robbins about this, but like there is this power that we have that is much greater than we often give ourselves credit for. So in the context of thinking of a question of someone who is shy or maybe like not stepping into it, that it's there is a maybe first part of it is acknowledging that there is much more robust power than people often give themselves credit for. And it may be due to just getting beaten up in life or to where they're at right now or whatever it is. But wow, how can we, how can we do that? And I think that's why I love executive coaching so much. You help, I mean, and actually working with people who are really clear, who have your back, who want to mentor you, who finding not just executive coaching, but working, because these are the people who can be your tribe and help you become even greater than you thought you could, right? And you need to have people who can see it in you even before you can see it in yourself.
Yes. And so for the shy person, I'm going to give you a creative tip. Here it is. And so anybody can use this, and this tip works. I do it with clients all the time. So I believe in hypnosis. And so this is the way I want you to think about hypnosis. Everybody we know has a smartphone. Most people do. Most people on this call have a smartphone. What I want you to know is if you think about your conscious brain as the hardware, and then you think about your unconscious brain as the iOS operating system, and then you think about your subconscious as the RAM that you're accessing, you need to update your unconscious brain. Hypnosis and meditation have that effect of doing that for you. You just need a software update. Your iPhone's not working the way that it should. If you go out and begin to write a script for yourself, and you can record it on this, of all the things you would like to begin to achieve in your life, and then you set a time that you're actually going to listen to that script every day. It takes about 21 days for hypnosis to really take in, but you're going to record all of the amazing things you want to do in your life around the shyness, around stopping smoking, around weight loss, around working out. You're going to record talking to yourself in a really positive affirmations for about 15 minutes. So write the script out. From there, you're going to really move yourself forward. This is just about giving yourself a software update. The shyness, it's not going to hold you back unless you let it. This is part of the inner critic in the story that you tell yourself about why you don't have the capacity or the capabilities to be successful and outgoing. This is not a real thing.
Yeah,
it's a crutch.
We need to, and sometimes other people can be really helpful in helping us get there, or we can try and find a way to, is that the narrative that we're telling ourselves is wrong. And we need to understand what the wrong narrative is, mm-hmm. and start to replace it with the right narrative. And I think we've been hearing a lot about that recently.
Yes.
And I just, I am just such a firm believer in that. As a psychologist, someone with a background in psychology, and as well as having had the opportunity to work with leaders now for about 15 years across all kinds of different industries, and also having seen it in my own life, that boy, our narratives that we're telling ourselves set the foundation and the ground, and also limit us and change then what is possible. So they can limit us, but they can also expand us when we can think about what narratives are possible, and what narratives we're telling ourselves, and what part of those are wrong. And so,
and I'm not discounting external forces that come and that are systematic and institutional, that are not out for your best interests. Those have to be dealt with, and that's a strategy. But first, you have to fortify yourself inside of that resilience. And this is what that tip that I gave for. I will never say that there aren't people that aren't here for your success, because that's true in all organizations. What I'm telling you is you need to pour into yourself in such a way that your resilience level goes up so that they have less of an impact with their words and the experiences that you're getting. And then look for a new job. And then look for a new job.
I know there's a lot of people here who want to follow you and your updates. How do people get in touch with you or follow you on your various outlets?
Follow me on LinkedIn. I try to post regularly. I'm getting good about sharing information. And then you can also follow the company at Ebony Equation Coaching on Instagram as well.
So the easiest way would be to go to LinkedIn, find Ebony Smith, connect.
Coach. That's my short link. So if you type in Ebony Smith Coach, you'll get my LinkedIn short
Ebony
link.
Smith Coach, and then from there you can see other things. So I'm looking at the time here, and I know
I know we're near the end.
I want to thank everybody who is here. And once again, I know we've had people join. I saw a few people ping in and say they're joining from the West Coast.
Wow.
And people from other countries. So far, we've had people from 11 different countries on Leading Well. And I don't know if we have a few new countries this time, but it never ceases to amaze me how the just rich conversations. And I always learn a ton. So I want to thank you for being here, Ebony, and I want to thank all of the participants for being here. I really appreciate all of the chats and insights, and I just when we started this about 8 weeks ago, we just had this idea. Let's try and fill a gap. Let's try and create some conversations, and this has just been a really rich addition to the series of conversations. So Ebony does, and I didn't even introduce her this way, but Ebony actually teaches some sessions for us in some of our programs, and also is a coach for us in some of our programs where we have executive coaching built in. We have a team of coaches, and she's one of those coaches in those programs. And so we've been working with Ebony in the context of the Center for Leadership for the last a couple of years.
Yeah, we're 2017.
And we have a lot more planned here coming up in the next while. So we're going to announce our next Leading Well here shortly. But thank you all for joining us here today, and reach out to us if you have questions. We can get them to Ebony, or reach out directly to Ebony, and we'll see you on Ebony. You get the last word. One
thing I want to say, there's some questions in here. What I will do is we'll save these questions, and I will go into LinkedIn and begin to answer them for you and as some posts. So I don't want you to think your question was in vain, because we do appreciate your engagement, but I'll go in and look for the questions that you gave and begin to do some posts when I do post this weekend. And next week, I'll answer all the questions in the post. So we thank you so much for the engagement. The Center for Leadership is here for you. It's been a great time talking with you all.
Thank you. We'll see you on the next episode of Leading Well.